Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, good people, wherever you are, wherever you happen to be, and however we're together. Thank you for being here. I'm Dave, and this is season 4 of Dave's Head. So, what's in my head? Well, first of all, you can probably see, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify video, a brand new look for Dave's Head in season 4. Brand new background for season 4. The same slips of the tongue though. New background, new microphone, all types of stuff. Most importantly, we're here in 2023. A lot's happened since we last talked in December 2022. Let's get into it. First and foremost, you see me wearing my Eagles green. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, it's kind of gray with green. It's a Super Bowl shirt from a couple years ago, from 2018, when my Birds got their first and only Super Bowl championship. Well, they're doing me proud right now. We're back in the Super Bowl. By the time this episode airs, we will be the weekend of the Super Bowl, which is the weekend of love. How about that? But first, let's go back to 2022. Took a birthday trip to Punta Cana. Stayed for New Year's. Went with my T.O. We had an amazing time. First and foremost, I was treated absolutely like a king. From friends, family, my T.O. had an amazing. Listen, I got to show you this steak. This steak was humongous that I had at a beautiful, amazing restaurant. Very Italian, huge restaurant. Just multiple rooms all over the place in New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey. Go figure. But amazing trip to Punta Cana. Had an amazing time there. Got lots of sun. Still wearing my tan. Came back and started 2023 and ran into my Philadelphia Eagles, who are on a buzzsaw right now, going to the Super Bowl. It's just a great time to be in Philly. I was actually talking yesterday, or I posted yesterday, rather, that I was out running some errands yesterday. Had a little lunch break, because I don't really take lunch. I just took a lunch break. But ran out to run some errands, had to drop off some dry cleaning, pick up some stuff from CVS, run the Giant, do all types of stuff. Every place that I went, at least one person said the words, "Go Birds" to me. It's like John in Philly, right? It has its own meaning. Go Birds can be thank you. Go Birds can be good morning, good afternoon, good evening, bye-bye, take care, be safe, Happy New Year. The atmosphere in Philly right now, or around Philly, any Eagles fans, is absolutely electric. The anticipation that we're this close to picking up our second world championship, aka Super Bowl, and the second within 5 years at that. It's an amazing time. It's an amazing time to be a football fan. It's an even better time to be an Eagles fan. And to see history getting made in the Super Bowl as well, where you have the first time two African-American quarterbacks face each other as starters in the Super Bowl. Now, it's also the first time two brothers face each other as well. The Kelsey brothers face each other. Kelsey from the Birds, of course, and Kelsey from the Chiefs. It's going to be a great game. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to Buffalo chicken dip and all the things going to happen. Having a party, of course. But looking forward to all those things. And, I feel pretty confident. I haven't done my prediction yet. I'm going to do it the Friday before the Super Bowl. Got to still, compare, contrast, look at the pros and cons, the offensive, defensive, special teams, coaching, intangibles, all that stuff. And then I'll come up with my my prediction for the game. Which, by the way, this postseason, I believe my record's 10-2 in the postseason. My only 2 losses were the wild card round. Go figure. Undefeated the last 2 weeks, 4-0 and 2-0. Floating kind of high. But a couple things that aren't floating too high is Florida. What the hell is going on in Florida? I mean, can Florida stop being a punchline? I mean, every time I turn around, that governor in Florida is doing something even more insane. This time, he's going after an AP African American Studies class. We can't even teach African American Studies anymore. And they rail about cancel culture, which I've done a whole episode talking about it. So feel free to go back prior seasons. There's no such thing as cancel culture. It's called accountability. You do things, people stop watching you. You do things, people stop supporting you. You do things, you lose your job. You do things, your marriage goes into a divorce. It's not cancel culture. It's called being held accountable for something you did. But in this case, they're canceling AP African American Studies. And the reason that the governor of Florida is giving is that it lacks educational value. African American Studies, AP African American Studies, the only course to be canceled. I'm using air quotes for those that are listening. But students are being robbed of their education. Here's some of the things that were taught in this AP African American Studies class. The true facts of slavery. Important, right? Because that story has been muddied up so much over the course of time. It's important to know the true facts of slavery. Being taught about African American culture, which this is supposed to be a melting pot, air quotes again, melting pot of a country. African American studies are an important part of that melting pot. I mean, think about how much of the African American culture is embedded, used, profited from in the United States. So why wouldn't we teach about it? Other countries' perception of black people is taught in this course. Specifically, how Caribbean people view black people and African Americans. And if you haven't had a conversation with a native Caribbean person and how they view United States black Americans, aka African Americans, versus how they view true native African Americans, you should. It's a very important discussion. Another thing that's taught in this course is how many things Americans enjoy today that have African American roots or roots in slavery, such as the music, the food. But these things lack educational value to the governor of Florida. You may notice I'm not mentioning his name. He's dead to me. I mean, seriously, he disgusts me with his actions at this point. But to me, this is all just trying to cater to the base because he wants to make a run at the White House. And so he has to be a lesser evil Trump. He has to be the nicer Trump. It's like good cop, bad cop, when they're both really, really bad cops. It's like one will shoot you, one will beat the hell out of you. And we'll get to something along those lines in a second. But we can't even teach AP African American Studies anymore because the governor, the head or lead in the state of Florida, who wants to aspire to become president of the United States, of the party that claims to be small government, air quotes again, is now telling you what your children and young adults should learn because they're small government. I'm still carrying this into 2023. Make it make sense. And then along those same lines, the last thing that's on my mind, which once again, this season, What's in My Head is brought to you in part by Digga Movers, your safe and swift moving company, an A+ rated one-stop shop, licensed and insured moving company, providing local and long-distance services on the move. For more information, visit their website at www.diggamovers.com or call 1-888-77-DIGGAM. That's 1-888-773-4436. The other thing I want to have made sense at some point is how we keep finding ourselves in the situations where people, humans, fellow citizens are being killed by police officers. At what point do we get so tired and enraged from seeing these incidents happen that we begin to set real foundation and framework to get rid of bad cops, to prosecute them, to treat them as every other citizen is treated when they break the law? I'm talking about Tyree Nichols. 5 police officers are charged with second-degree murder and other charges as well after a traffic stop escalated into a savage beating. And I'm only speaking on a savage beating from what I've heard and read on social media. I refuse to watch the video. We're going to talk a little later about trauma. I refuse to put myself into that trauma state, watching yet another young black man brutalized and ultimately killed by police. I can't do it anymore. I can't watch it anymore. The fact that it happened is enough trauma for me. The fact that there are people who still have that trigger of seeing flashing lights raises their heart rate, gets them anxious, makes them wonder, is today the day I become a hashtag? I become a news feed or a news lead, excuse me. So I refuse to watch the video. I can't do it. But some other troubling things about this. Now, there's a rumor I saw that supposedly Brother Nichols was dating the baby mama of one of the cops or something like that. And that could have been the motivation behind this, or motive, as they say, legal terms. But these 5 police officers, who are all black, by the way, 3 of them belonging to a Greek letter organization that I'm not a part of, but there's a part of a larger organization that we all are part of. 9 organizations are a part of. And I'm not going to mention them because I don't want to defame that organization. They are not that. Those 3 officers who belong to that organization are not that organization. So we're not going to defame them at all. But there are also other cops. There's a white cop. There's who was either suspended pending firing. There are medical professionals who perhaps did not handle the situation and taken care of him correctly, who've been terminated. This is such a huge clusterfuck that everybody should go to jail, honestly. Well, we've got to have accountability. I talked about cancel culture. Cancel culture, cancel culture, cancel culture. No, it's you do something, you're being held accountable for it. The funny thing is, I haven't heard anybody say these cops are being canceled. Why? Because they did something, they're being held accountable to it. Exact same thing. There's no such thing as cancel culture. I'm not going to revisit that again. But another problem I have is these 5 officers received bail between $250,000 and $300,000. Now, if their bail system is like Pennsylvania or Delaware, or, where you have to put 10% down, I have no idea. But I'm just saying, using the 10% number, they're putting somewhere between $25,000 and $35,000 down to post bail. My big problem is the fact that there was bail at all. Their actions directly led to the death of a human being. Why are they being given bail at all? They should sit their ass in jail, just like every other murderer, because it's second degree murder. It's a murder charge. They are a threat, literally a threat to society. They have the marksmanship, with a weapon. They have training for physical confrontation and to physically attack someone. They clearly have some sort of anger issues, psychological issues. And they have no regard for life. So why are they even allowed to post bail? And so it brings me back to bail reform for a second. There should be no more discussion about bail reform. If these 5 officers can kill someone and then post bail, there's no reason anyone should be sitting in jail for lesser crimes. Shouldn't happen. The other thing about this case, all these facts come to light after these incidents happen, right? But somewhere along the line, somebody knew all of these things. One of those things is 4 of the 5 officers were previously disciplined, including 2 who had failed to report using force during arrest on their report. Last I checked, the police report is an affidavit of a statement, meaning lying in that statement is perjury, is a crime. It's time we start holding cops accountable for not filing correct police reports. I'm not saying you made a mistake. Oh, I thought it was the passenger side. It was actually the driver's side who got clipped and got a scratch on the car. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you said this person did this and video footage says, no, that ain't nowhere close to what happened. You filed a report that said this. Your ass is going to jail for perjury. We have to start holding bad cops accountable. It's the only way we're going to get them off the force. Especially in this situation, the reports that they filed were contradicted by the video footage. They were stupid enough, callous enough, cocky enough, I don't know, to actually have their body cams on. But how is this not perjury? How is that not a charge as well? They filed a police report that was contradicted by the cameras. I don't understand it. When are we going to establish a nationwide database to get rid of these thugs, get rid of these bad cops, get rid of these threat to life that exist in this country? How many more people have to be killed, shot, choked, beaten, knees on neck, trumped up, made up charges? How much longer do we have to say, oh, it's just a rotten apple in the bunch? Okay, but you let this rotten apple go from this precinct to one 3 towns away because there's no database that says this person's a rotten apple. You shouldn't hire him. At what point are we going to do that? At what point are we going to hold police departments, the whole justice system accountable to get rid of the bad people they claim are few and far in between? The justice system goes out of its way to prosecute every other entity except their own. Think about it. Administrative leave pending investigation. Demoted in rank. Desk duty. Fired, but can be hired 2 townships, 1 township away. For things that if we did those, we would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Might result in fines, might result in jail time, might result in both. Our lives would be disrupted if we did those things. How much longer are we going to let it happen? At what point do we say, you fix this, or I will no longer vote for anyone who votes to provide you funding to continue business as usual? I say the only way to effect change in the entire justice system, from policing to prosecutions to judges, is to start in the local governments, the state governments, the federal government. Stop voting for people who do not come out clearly and say they're going to make change, and then who don't actually effect that change. You might get 1 term out of it. You're not going to get a second. That's the collaboration we all need as people. Because we have to be tired of seeing this on the news. We have to be tired of burying our friends or watching, funerals online. We have to be tired of covering our eyes as we watch this video, dreaming about bad situations, so many things. We have to be tired of trauma at the hands of the justice system. We have to. It's the only way we're going to change anything. But that's what's in my head. So one thing I did, this is the weekend of love. Valentine's weekend is when this episode drops. And so naturally, instead of looking at love, I looked at the other side of love, betrayal. And so I Googled the phrase, what is the true definition of betrayal? The first result came from Merriam-Webster's dictionary, naturally. And they defined it 2 different ways. The first was the act of betraying someone or something, or the fact of being betrayed. The second definition they gave was a revelation of something hidden or secret. Now, according to the American Psychological Association, or APA, from 20 to 40% of divorces are linked to infidelity. Fun fact, that's how mine is linked. But they also say men tend to cheat more than women, which kind of sort of found surprising, but maybe that's my circle. So I looked up an article on marriage.com, which was published in 2021. And the title of that article was 8 types of betrayal in relationships that can be damaging. Now, the premise of this article is they're not focusing on infidelity. They're focusing on other types of betrayal that can happen in marriages. And so I'll run through them really, really quickly. The first one they talk about is intangible acts of infidelity, such as financial infidelity or emotional acts of cheating. A lot of cheating starts with the emotional connection. The second one they talk about are desperate acts of selfishness. And so this is constantly acting in excessively self-indulgent ways without considering the needs of your partner. The third, which I actually think should be number 1, but it's if this happens, it's very, very painful. And it's, the definition of betrayal, but not sticking up for your partner, especially in public. I'll add to that with also family and friends. The fourth is self-explanatory, which is lying. Small lies, babe, this doesn't taste good. You could say that, or you can say, yeah, babe, it tastes fine. Probably not so harmful. Big lies, yeah, pretty harmful. Number 5 is also one that's pretty big and important, which is using your partner's past against them. Now, they trusted you enough to tell you about their past, open up themselves to you, and you use that whether it's a moment of anger, moment of rage, argument, dispute, whatever. Number 6 is denying your partner's sexual desires. Now, I had to think about this one a little bit because, there's legitimate reasons why you might not be in the mood for sex, but you can also use it as a punishment. So that's kind of how I see that one. Number 7, emotional coldness or detachment. I'm a Capricorn. That kind of describes me sometimes, especially when I'm hurt. Something I'm working on internally, but I could be very cold and very detached when I'm hurt in some type of way. The last one actually should be up there as well, which is just disrespect. If you're disrespecting your partner, that's a blatant betrayal of their trust, blatant betrayal of their, the honesty and the pact that you have with them to respect and honor them. So disrespect is another one, another form of betrayal. Now, some acts of betrayal, although not cheating or infidelity, hurt as much as cheating and infidelity, which was the point of this article. Now, like I said, it's the weekend of love, Valentine's weekend when this episode drops. Why am I talking about betrayal so much? I'm talking about it because my guest for this episode, Dr. Debi Silber. Now, Dr. Silber is the founder of the PBT, which stands for Post Betrayal Transformation Institute, and is a holistic psychologist, a health mindset and personal development expert, the author of Trust Again, and is a 2-time #1 international best-selling author of The Unshakable Woman and From Hardened to Healed. Her podcast, which we'll get into, From Betrayal to Breakthrough, is also globally ranked within the top 1.5% of podcasts. I'm hoping to be there someday. Her recent Ph.D. study on how we experience betrayal made 3 groundbreaking discoveries that changes how long it takes to heal. In addition to being on Fox, CBS, The Dr. Oz Show, and twice TEDx and more, she's an award-winning speaker and coach dedicated to helping people move past their betrayals, as well as any other blocks preventing them from their health, work, relationships, confidence, and happiness they want most. With that, welcome to Dave's Head, Dr. Silber. How's it going?
Thank you so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Very, very much looking forward to this. And so I know that I gave you an intro, but I like to have my guests give an intro in their own words. So if you could tell the people who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I run the PBT, Post Betrayal Transformation Institute. You can imagine you don't do something like that unless you need to. And it's my 30th year in business, and I was in health, mindset, personal development. I had a really painful betrayal from my family. Thought I did everything I needed to do to heal from that. And then it happened again a few years later. This time it was my husband. That was the deal breaker. So got him out of the house and looked at the 2 experiences thinking, well, what's similar to these 2? I mean, me, but what else? And I realized, I never really took my needs seriously. Boundaries were always getting crossed. So I decided to make a big change. And here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. And I decided to go back for a Ph.D. A book wasn't getting me out of this jam. I needed a whole Ph.D. in it. And it was in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential. So while I was there, I did a study. I studied betrayal. And honestly, I studied it just because I wanted to heal. What holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life.
Wow. Real quick. So 2 quick things. 6 dogs. What kind of dogs do you have, and why 6?
Yeah, well, we actually lost 4 within a year and a half, and then
Wow.
got another 2. So we're currently at 4 again. So right now we have a really old Havanese, we have a golden doodle, about the size of a pony, and we have a chocolate lab and an English cream lab.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think the biggest dog I've ever seen was either Akita, or we used to call them horse dogs. I forget the official name of them. They're pretty big dogs.
Yeah.
So let's get into the Q&A. And I did read a definition of betrayal from Merriam-Webster, but let's talk about the human definition of it. What is actual betrayal? Why does it hurt? And what does it do to us?
Yeah, I define it as the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule, and every relationship has them. The way it works is the more we trust and the more we depend on someone, the deeper the betrayal. So let's take a child who's completely dependent on their parent. The parent does something awful. That's going to have a different impact than, let's say, your coworker taking credit for your idea. Still a betrayal, different level of cleanup left in the wake of it.
Yeah. And so why does it hurt so much? Is it the fact that
You
we
know,
trust?
Yeah, well, sure. Think about it. This was the person, these were the people you trusted the most. This was the person, these were the people who gave you a sense of safety and security. So when this is the person, these are the people to shatter that very sense of safety and security that they gave. It's traumatizing. Think about it. If the person we trusted the most proves untrustworthy, who do we trust? When the one we run to when other people are causing harm is the one causing the harm, where do we go? It shatters our body, our mind, our heart.
Now, I talked about in my opening about being cold or detached when I'm hurt. What does betrayal do to us? How does it change us?
That was actually one of the three discoveries. Well, the first discovery was that betrayal is a very different type of trauma. I thought so. I had been through death of a loved one. I'd actually been through disease. But I was like, you know what? Betrayal feels very different for me. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to assume it was the same for my participants. So I asked them, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different for you? Unanimously, they said it's
Mm-hmm.
so different. And here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the whole self is shattered and has to be rebuilt. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. It's huge. And so, when all of that has to be rebuilt, it didn't kind of qualify as other types of trauma. So I coined a new term, post betrayal transformation, which is the complete and total rebuild of your life and yourself after an experience with betrayal. But to answer your question, that was the second discovery. There's actually what was discovered was there's a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal, it's known as post-betrayal syndrome. We've had probably close to 90,000 people take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. And a few really interesting things about that. The first thing is we've all been taught time heals all wounds. I have the
Mm-hmm.
proof that when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. There's a question on the quiz that says, "Is there anything else you'd like to share?" And people write things like, "My betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal
Wow.
happened 15 years ago. I feel gutted." So we know healing does not happen on its own. It needs to be deliberate and intentional. But every few months, I pull the stats from the quiz to see where people land, and I'm happy to share them if you'd want to hear.
Sure, sure.
Okay, because that would be really awkward right now if you said no. Okay. So now imagine, 90,000 people, men, women, just about every country's represented. 78% constantly revisit their experience.
Mm-hmm.
81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. That's exhausting. 94% deal with painful triggers. And anyone who's had a trigger, you know how painful they are. The most
Mm-hmm.
common physical symptoms: 71% have low energy, 68% have sleep issues, 63% have extreme fatigue. You can sleep a whole night, you wake up, you're exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
47% have weight changes. In the beginning, maybe you can't hold food down. Later on, you're using food for comfort.
Mm-hmm.
45% have a digestive issue, and that could be anything: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, you name it. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
70% are walking around in a state of disbelief. 68% are unable to focus. 64% are in shock. And 62% can't concentrate. So imagine this: you
Wow.
can't concentrate, you have a gut issue, you're exhausted, you still have to work, you
Yeah.
still have to raise your kids. That's not even the emotional ones. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. You can bounce back and forth all day long
Mm-hmm.
between those two emotions. 82% feel hurt. 80% have anxiety. 79% are stressed. Just a few more. Here's why I wrote trust again. 84% have an inability to trust. I mean, that one just killed me. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they don't want to be hurt again.
Yeah.
82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Mm. Yeah, those some interesting stats. So, moment of clarity and honesty. So, my betrayal with my ex-wife happened almost 4 years ago to the month. Um, and so I constantly said, and it's ironic you said this, the time heals all wounds. That's the way I was raised, the time heals all wounds. What I found is I do suffer from those triggers. Literally had a trigger probably about an hour and a half ago. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I've struggled with sleep since the incidents that occurred
Yeah.
that dissolved our marriage. So yeah, I definitely empathize with a lot of those things. I'm surprised by a lot of the '80s though, but I'm not surprised that so many people have shied away from forming significant relationships as a result of betrayal, because betrayal can, as they say, cut very deep. And so, who wants to feel that again?
And I want to take it a little bit further with that study. First of all, I mean, with these stats, First of all, you're right. You didn't hear me say one thing, 20%, 30%. These numbers are high. They're also not necessarily from a recent betrayal. So imagine this. Your parent who did something awful when you were a kid, the girlfriend or boyfriend who broke your heart in high school. That person may not know, care, even remember. They may not even be alive. And here we are struggling with these symptoms today. That's because unless and until you deliberately move through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough, that was the 3rd discovery, you will stay with many of these symptoms. They may, and then what happens is we attribute them to something else. Oh, it's stress. Oh, it's aging. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's your unhealed betrayal. That's why the 3rd discovery was so exciting. And happy to talk about that if you want me to share.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this was the most exciting out of all of them. And what was discovered was while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, 4 years, right? I mean, we have people who've come into the PBT Institute, they've been struggling for 40 years. If we are to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome like I just shared, to a completely transformed, rebuilt place of post-betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 now proven predictable stages. What's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every one of those stages, and we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. Happy to share the 5 stages if you want to hear them.
Absolutely. That was one of the questions.
Yeah. Okay. So they're totally mapped out in Trust Again. It's what all of our coaches are certified in. It's all we do within the PBT Institute is move people through the stages. Here's a real simplified version right here. Stage 1, before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody, me too, was a real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. Think about it. If a table only has 2 legs, easy for that table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, Discovery Day, the scariest of all of the stages. And I'm sure you remember exactly where you were the moment you learned of your discovery. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Right here, you've ignited the stress response. You're now headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot wrap your mind around what you just learned. This makes no sense. And your worldview, right? Your worldview has been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model. It's the rules that govern you that prevent chaos. Don't go here. Trust this person. This is how life works. And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, every rule you've held to be real and true is no longer. The bottom has truly bottomed out on you. And a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. So this is terrifying. But think, you probably know exactly, you like it.
Oh,
you
yeah.
could read it right back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But think about it.
I didn't sleep for a couple of days. It was
Exactly.
It was a crash. Yeah.
Of course. But if the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Where do I go? Who can I trust? Here's the trap though. Stage 3, by far, is the most common place we get stuck. And here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, you think it's good. You're like, okay, we got this. We can do this. And because you don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5, transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because you don't know there's anywhere else to go, you start parking here. You plant roots here. You're not supposed to, but you don't know that. And 4 things start to happen. The first thing is, and remember, and picture yourself right here. You get all those small self benefits. You get to be right. You get your story. You get someone to blame. You get sympathy from everyone you tell your story to. And on some level, because there's nothing better than that at the time, it feels good. So you plant deeper roots. You're not supposed to, but you don't know that. And now, because you're here longer than you should be, you start questioning things. And the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe I'm not that great. Maybe I deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So you plant deeper roots. Again, you're not supposed to be here, but you don't know that. Now, because these are the thoughts you're thinking, this is the energy you're putting out. So like energy attracts like energy. And now you start calling situations and circumstances and relationships to confirm, yep, this is where you belong. The misery loves company crowd, they come around now too. And right? Now think about this.
Yeah.
Here's like, this is the glue right here. Because it's so bad, but you don't know there's anywhere else to go. Right here, you resign yourself that you're like, this stinks, but I mean, I have to get through my day. I have to figure out how to make this work. Right here, we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, whatever it is, to numb, avoid, and distract ourselves from this painful place. So think about it. You do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years out and say that emotional eating you're doing, that numbing in front of the TV, that drinking you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. They would say it happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually applying this to what I went through. I was stuck in stage 3, working my butt off for a while.
Exactly, because that's what we do. And then the longer we're in stage 3, the harder it is to leave. And one of the reasons is because we find all of our people. Like, let's say you have this misery loves company group and you're commiserating with them. You will actually sabotage your healing because you don't want to outgrow your group. We see this all the time. Or let's say you go to a well-meaning therapist, but if that therapist isn't highly skilled in betrayal, if anything is going to glue you to stage 3, it's unpacking your story over and over and over again without a deliberate and intentional plan to move you through the stages. We have people coming into the PBT Institute all the time with therapy trauma. That's just something we see. Anyway, if you're and that's why I wrote From Hardened to Healed. Trust again moves you through the 5 stages, but everyone was getting stuck in stage 3. So From Hardened to Healed is just for those in stage 3. I'm like, you've been through the worst of it already. You owe it to yourself to have that transformation that's waiting for you in stages 4 and stage 5. Anyway, if you're willing to let go of the small self benefits, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. Here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Right there in that decision, you start turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage you'd been creating in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. If you've ever moved to a new place, condo, apartment, house, office, all your stuff's not there. It's not quite cozy yet, but you're like, okay, all right, we got this. We can do this. It feels like that. But what's so interesting about stage 4 is, think about it. If you were to move, you don't bring everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you want to be in this new space. And what I found was, if your friends weren't there for you, this is the moment that you don't take them with you. And people say to me all the time, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come. Very common to outgrow friendships in this one spot right there. Anyway, when you've settled into this new mental space, you've made it cozy, you've made it mentally home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You couldn't do that before. You didn't have the bandwidth. Now you do. Your mind is healing. You're making new rules. You're making new boundaries based on what you see so clearly now. And you have a new worldview based on the road you just traveled. And the 4 legs of that table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Wow. So as you're going through these stages, in my mind, I'm playing back through 4 years ago in the different stages. I can pinpoint exactly some of the things you're saying, where I was when I reached those stages. Now, I want to say I'm in stage 5. I feel like stage 4 was when I got my house back in order and actually started returning to the working out, the cooking, which is something that I love, traveling a lot more, and really moving past that situation altogether. And so I like to say I'm in stage 5 now, but what's interesting about where I am now is I do question sometimes if I have healed all the way, or if I'm healed enough to move forward into something new, something serious. And so the follow-up question I would have is, how do you know if we haven't healed yet from betrayal?
Yeah. That very question lets you know that there's work to do. There's work to do. When you truly transform, you are a different version of yourself. You take all the parts you love, you leave behind everything that no longer serves, and you've rebuilt your ability to trust, number one, in yourself, and slowly but surely in others as well. But if you're,
Mm-hmm.
like here's if you're not maxed out in your health, in your work, in your relationships, if you are not living in that state of abundance, there's work to do. If it's like people like this, they're like, no, I'm good as long as I don't see him. No, you're not healed. Or
Yeah.
I'm fine, I'm okay, you're not too bad. Mm-mm-mm. No, 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 that's not it. That's not it. We see in stage 4 and stage 5, like for example, just to close the loop on my story, rebuilding is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move on, that's what I did with my family, wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something from the ground up new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, as two totally transformed people, we married each other again. New
Nice.
rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids as our bridal party. Betrayal absolutely gives you the opportunity to, everything has crashed and burned, and you get to rebirth a new you, a new collective you. But in stage 5, it is so common where I will see new businesses, new passion projects, new relationships, new levels of health. You weren't ready for them earlier, like the PBT Institute. That's a stage 5 thing. My new
Yeah.
marriage to my husband, that's a stage 5 thing. You can't do that when you're in stage 3. You just don't have access to that, the clarity.
Well, Dave said podcast is a stage 5 thing. Um, so real quick, two things. One, the rebuilding from the ground up with my ex is something that's a 0% chance. But I did have just a random side question. So you said new rings. Was that symbolic of the new built from the ground up relationship, or is it just a matter of you didn't have them anymore, or you just wanted something new?
Oh, it is absolutely, everything was brand new. New date, new ring, wedding, the gown, new date, new everything. And
Gotcha.
and
So
for
just
for
a.
me, that was something that I wasn't building off the old.
Mm-hmm.
The old was dead and gone, and that's the only way you birth the new. So for me, it was new everything. I didn't want the old anymore. The old didn't work for me anymore. I had a whole new list of criteria. I was a whole new me, and he was a whole new him. So it was really based on a very different, set of newness. But what I see so often is people are so afraid of the death and destruction of the old. So they
Mm-hmm.
just keep patching up, patching up, patching up, patching up. But betrayal really levels everything. And so you do have an opportunity, in some cases, if you want, to build something entirely new.
Hmm.
You don't have to, but in some
Yeah.
cases, the opportunity is absolutely there.
Yeah, it absolutely depends on the situation, how the
Mhm.
betrayal actually happened, the severity, all that. So this episode drops Valentine's weekend, and so a big part of Valentine's weekend are relationships, marriages, kind of the unofficial celebration of those days, minus the anniversary itself. But to get to that point, you have to establish trust with someone to get into something serious, whether it be relationship, engagement, marriage. So you've gotten through the 5 stages, but how do you actually learn to trust again? How do you not, how are you not triggered by any single thing that happens with somebody new or ready to run away as soon as something minutely bad happens? How do you learn that trust and that longevity to be able to trust someone?
Yeah, trust is so foundational. So it takes a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes work to rebuild. I'll give you an analogy. This is how, let's say you're even thinking of rebuilding with the person who hurt you. I look at trust like a brick wall. Every opportunity, the only way I know of a brick wall being built is brick by brick by brick. It could take a
Mm-hmm.
long time, right? And then in that one earth shattering moment, the whole thing comes tumbling down. You can look at the rubble of bricks and say, I don't have the least bit of interest in watching that thing get rebuilt, walk away, totally fine. However, if you're willing, the person who's betrayed, if whose trust has been shattered, if they are willing to watch the brick wall be rebuilt, that would be their job. That's it. The other
Mm-hmm.
person has to be a really good bricklayer. And it goes up the first way it went up, brick by brick by brick. Every opportunity they have to show that they're trustworthy, that's one brick in that brick wall. Now, here's what I see. I see someone who built the brick wall, they knock it all down. They really don't have much of an interest in rebuilding it. So the person whose trust has been shattered, the person who's been betrayed, they're like, I'll build it. Well, that's why they never feel safe. That's why they never feel secure. That's why they're anxious. It's not their role. But they're so afraid of, wait a second, that's the only way it's going to work. Well, then that tells you it's not working.
Wow. Yeah, and it's also somewhat selfish of the other person to tear down the wall and not take the responsibility if it's offered to them to actually rebuild it.
And that's when you know, heal yourself, move along.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on this a lot, the post-betrayal transformation, but how is that different from post-traumatic growth?
Yeah. So originally I was studying betrayal and post-traumatic growth. And I look at post-traumatic growth as like the upside of trauma, how trauma leaves you, death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster, leaves you with a new awareness, insight, perspective you didn't have. But as I mentioned earlier, I had been through death of a loved one and I'd been through disease. And I was like, no, betrayal feels very different. So the difference in post-betrayal transformation and post-traumatic growth is, with post-traumatic growth, like let's say you lose someone you love, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss. You don't necessarily take it personally. You don't necessarily lose your ability to trust, right? But when you're betrayed, you can question your own sanity. You can lose your ability to trust. You can take it personally and all of that. So while post-traumatic growth, you have to rebuild your life. You don't have to. That's the opportunity. With betrayal, you rebuild your life. You also have to rebuild the self. So that's the difference. The self, how the self is affected, rejection, abandonment, confidence, worthiness, belonging, trust, that's the difference. So it didn't quite qualify as post-traumatic growth. It's like, yeah, you have to rebuild yourself, but your life, but you also have to rebuild the self. So I coined that new term, post-betrayal transformation. And when you are living in that space, it is very, very different.
Yeah, I actually lost two very close people to me last year, and just talking about how trauma feels different, much different feeling than 4 years ago with my ex. So absolutely agree with that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
talk about your books, The Unshakable Woman and From Hardened to Healed. Obviously, the inspiration was around the family and spouse betrayal, but talk about that inspiration for those books and how do you see those books changing people's lives?
Yeah. Well, trust again was the one where I just sat everybody down and I said, okay, the story's in here. I sat my family down, my husband down, and I thought my kids would be like, oh, come on, mom, And I'll tell you, they were really good about it, and my husband was my biggest supporter. He said, you're going to help a lot of people and you're going to show them that betrayers can change. So Trust Again was a really important book for me because here's where it's like, all these discoveries were made, and I just couldn't wait to share them. My study participants, the 5 stages, my story, and then From Hardened to Healed and The Unshakable Woman. I wasn't quite ready to talk about my betrayal just yet. And then when I saw everybody getting stuck in stage 3, that's when I wrote From Hardened to Healed, because I just wanted them to realize that they're settling in every area of life and giving that person who hurt them so much power by just staying stuck. And I didn't certainly do anything they couldn't do. And there wasn't a roadmap. Like there's a roadmap to move to stage 4 and stage 5. It's such an exciting space. Like, why would you just stay in this space of just surviving? So.
Yeah, it's interesting you use the word settle. That's kind of what I attribute my last relationship or marriage to. But so talk about your podcast and how that works. What listeners can look forward to listening to your podcast.
Yeah, so it's From Betrayal to Breakthrough, and that was one of those other stage 5 things. I mean, it's amazing how what pops out of you. You can't help it when you're in stage 5. So the 2 TEDx talks and the 6 books and the PBT Institute and a new marriage and the podcast. So it's just and the certification program, which is just helping so many people. But the but From Betrayal to Breakthrough, it's so exciting because I'm interviewing I have some solo episodes, and I also interview just people who've been through. I mean, what they've been through is just incredible, and I have doctors, healers, healers, therapists, coaches. They also share their own strategies and modalities to help people heal. So it's a really good resource. If people aren't ready to join the PBT Institute, it's a great place just to get some extra resources.
Now, is this a mix of PB Institute, I'll say graduates, and people who have not participated, or is it all PBT Institute people?
Oh no, it's really people from the outside. A lot of times though, I'll have a guest on there and let's say they're talking about some sort of modality. What I'll do is we'll talk about it on the podcast, but then I'll bring them into the PBT Institute to do a masterclass where they're then demonstrating that modality. Like I just interviewed someone and she does hypnotherapy and she was explaining the benefits of hypnotherapy as it relates to betrayal. And I was like, you know what, that would be a really good thing for my members. So I brought her in and she did a hypnotherapy session with all of our members. And then it lives in our masterclass section in the community. So sometimes if there's a topic we cover where that doctor, that coach, that healer has a very certain modality that can help my members, I bring it in. Because really within the Institute, it's anything that could help my members heal. We are walking them through the 5 stages, and even our coaches all have different specialties: reconciliation, divorce, chronic pain, narcissism, anything. But the master classes too offer just other ways to help them heal.
Gotcha. I will say, I think my mind moves too much and too fast for me to be hypnotized. I would like to try it one day. Just generally speaking, not necessarily for healing, but just generally one day see if I can actually be hypnotized. Cause I think my mind just goes too fast for me to actually slow down to be hypnotized, but it'll be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah. It's just another one of those modalities because you never know. I mean, healing has to happen on every level: physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, which is also why people miss the boat when they only do, let's say, talk therapy. But I just want to bring into the Institute, any modality where some of our members are like, oh, wow, that really moved the needle for them. Because for some, it may be one thing and others it's something else. So I want them to have everything.
Gotcha. Well, that's the end of the Q&A segment, and now we're going to move to my favorite segment with my guest called First Thoughts. But First Thoughts is brought to you in part by SRA Solutions, simple solutions for complex problems. For over 15 years, SRA Solutions has provided today's solution to prevent tomorrow's problem. SRA Solutions will provide you effective, efficient, robust, and reliable business intelligence, application website design, PC support services, and much more. For more information, check out their website at www.sresolutions.org. Now, we're 4 seasons in, so if you don't know First Thoughts, as I've said for the first 3, shame on you, but I'm happy you're here. The way First Thoughts works is I pose a phrase or a question to my guests. The idea is, what's your first thought? They're not privy to these at all because that would kind of ruin the first thought thing. So, Dr. Silber, are you ready for First Thoughts?
I'm ready.
All right, so first thought, if I say numbing ourselves to you, what's your first thought?
Stage 3.
Okay. And feel free to elaborate as much or as little as you want to.
Okay.
All right,
So that's when people numb. That's when they'll use food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy because they don't want to feel or face what's going on.
Okay. So next first thought, if I say we're drawn to a betrayal type to you, what's your first thought?
Unhealed. A classic sign of a repeat betrayal an unhealed betrayal is a repeat betrayal. That's how we know we haven't healed. And the message will get louder and louder and louder until and unless we pay attention.
Or the betrayal takes us out, I guess. But yeah. All right. So last first thought, if I say the word self-respect to you, what's your first thought?
Not tolerating what doesn't serve you at the highest level.
Yeah, one of the things, and sometimes I kind of jump in and elaborate on some of my first thoughts, but popped in my head is one of the things I took from my situation was the lack of self-respect I had for myself that kind of led to that situation. And so it's been one of my focuses to not settle or take, to put me in situations where I don't respect myself first.
Exactly.
But so this season, I'm turning over power to my guests with a new mini segment called T.O. First Thoughts. Now, I do have a very good friend of mine who I have a nickname for her as T.O., not the same meaning, but this stands for turning over power. And what I'm going to do now is allow my guests, again, they're not privy to this, to pose a phrase or question to me that I have to give my first thoughts to. So whatever you want, any topic, Dr. Silber, what's my first thought?
Your first. Let's see. There's a very famous saying we have within the PBT Institute, and it's face it, feel it, heal it. What's your thought about that?
So my first thought would be I tend to take the direct approach to things, except in the situations when I'm hurt. So a lot of times I face things except in situations where I'm uncomfortable or hurt in some kind of way. And so I'll face it every other time, but I won't face it because I'm hurting. And then I never get to that healing spot. And so I have to kind of go through that cycle a couple of times. So I'm comfortable with the pain, and then I can actually start the healing.
Great.
But that's something I'm working on internally. All right, Dr. Silber, I want to thank you for stepping in Dave's head and being a good sport with the first edition of our reverse first thoughts. Before I let you go, as always, I like to have my guests, if they want to promote anything or anything coming up you want to talk about. So feel free to do so now.
I'd say everything we have is at the PBT Institute. The PBT is in Post Betrayal Transformation Institute.com, and we have an amazing program for the betrayer as well.
Now that's interesting. I didn't think about the betrayer part. Huh.
There are some who they're tired of living that way, and they're ready to become someone they're proud of. And they get to work with me in a group format, and I'll tell you, they are sitting there with their pad and pen. I tell them what to say, what to do, what not to say, what not to do, and they transform just like the people in our programs for the betrayed.
Yeah, I will say that's we might have to do a whole nother segment and record a whole nother show, but that's stonewalling me a little bit because this whole time we're talking about being betrayed and not really focusing on the betrayer, and to find out that there's a whole section dedicated to just the betrayer becoming a better person is amazing. I mean, honestly, that's the first word that comes to mind, is amazing. Because there are two parties in this, well, at least two parties in this situation, the person who's getting hurt and the person who's doing the hurting, and to have something to help them become a better person, probably in your situation or someone, going through your situation, might lend to that rebuilding a relationship with the person who betrayed them. It's a symbol of them going through it together and them building that wall back up, showing the effort to become a better person, and it makes it much easier to reconcile that type of situation. Well,
exactly. I mean, we do. It's very common to have, one member going through our, let's say, reclaim program, which is 3 months, another one going through our rebuild program for the betrayer for 3 months, and they meet back up again as two very different people in only 3 months.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you again for stepping into Dave's head, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
My absolute favorite segment of my podcast is my GRIN, which stands for Great Reason to Be in Love with Now. The first one of season 4 involves ABC Every Day. ABC Every Day is a site that claims that it, quote, helps you navigate life's challenges and choices so that you can stay on top of the things that matter to you. Obviously, this is the weekend of love, so I had to find something to grin about related to Valentine's Day weekend. They published a piece last year around this time called Valentine's Day Ideas based on the 5 love languages. Now, if you remember, about a season and a half ago, I talked about my 5 love languages in order. I'm not going to do it. Go back and watch or listen. You'll figure out what my order is. You should kind of know my first and last one easily. But in case you need a reminder of what the actual love languages are, they are quality time, physical touch, acts of service, giving and receiving gifts, and words of affirmation. Now, real quick, how do you figure out someone's love languages? Or at least the order, preference order. So there's 2 ways. One's easier, one's a little more harder. We talked about effort, building up that wall. Well, part of that could be investigating, paying attention to figure out the love language order. Or you could take the simple route and do an online test with your partner, Valentine, and look at the results, have a conversation about it. But that test could get the wheels going to figuring out what the love languages are. So from this site, I'm going to give you, for each of the love languages, my top 3 Valentine's Day ideas for each of the love languages. Now, I'm going to give you their three, my favorite three from their list that they gave. Some were 5, some were 8. And then I'm going to give you one of my own. That kind of goes along the lines, something I would like from that love language. So the first one, quality time. Now, the 3 I'm going to give you from their list that were my favorites: a walk or picnic on the beach, spending the night in a hotel, and I like to say, or traveling for a weekend away, something like that, or a board game night. And I think all 3 of those, it's very intimate, it's very personable, it's very personal, and it also is dealing specifically with spending quality time. Now you can add on top of each of those things a cell phone or technology-free night. Boom, there you go. But one that I would take from this list, or not from this list, but one I would say for quality time that really kind of hits home for quality time for me: cooking together. I love to cook, absolutely love to cook. And so doing that together, to me, is an amazing use of quality time. And it's definitely hitting high on my love language for quality time. Now, the next one is physical touch. So the 3 I'm going to give you from their list are snuggle up, watch a movie. Always a good one, at least unless you don't like to be touched. Couples massage or a spa day. And a little freaky, maybe something new in the bedroom, depending on your style, preference. If you're not into toys, you don't like that type of freakiness, then okay, cool. Maybe a different position, maybe do a little, I'm not going to give you tips on your sex life, but something new in the bedroom. Air quotes, whatever new means to you. But one I would add for myself under physical touch is maybe going for a ride, holding hands while you're on a ride, or interacting in a way in the car while just going for a ride. Now, granted, that could also be quality time, but it's the intimacy of riding, listening to music. I'm big windy roads in the spring or fall type of person. Fall when the leaves are all changing colors, or the spring when it's just getting warm, you can crack the sunroof for the first time and just kind of ride and listen to music, holding hands, or just even touching, that type of way. So that's physical touch. Acts of service. This is kind of a cool one. Nice, cool list they have here. Make them breakfast in bed. Can't go wrong with food, right? Unless you can't cook. Do the laundry. Or something along those lines, a household chore of some type. Do dishes, do laundry, clean the floors, clean the bathroom, something. Acts of service. Organize a mystery date. Now, while that, again, touches quality time, may touch physical touch, but it's the act of organizing that mystery date, the setting of that up, the putting in the work, the time, the dedication to getting something put together, that makes it a great act of service. Now, for me, I'm always going to come back to food, probably, usually, travel, maybe. But one of the things I'll say is feed me tacos. Organize going to a taco spot or making me tacos. You cannot go wrong with either. And if you happen to know my taco spots are ready to go to, boom. Take me there, get me tacos and jalapeno margaritas. Boom, check, check, check. You're getting all types of check that night. The next one, or next to last one, is giving and receiving gifts. Now, seems pretty simple. Getting your spouse's favorite flowers. Believe it or not, men like flowers too. I tend to pay attention. So get them something they've been talking about. They've been talking about some eyeglasses or earrings or perfume or some new fad face scrub. You'd be surprised. Doesn't have to be some crazy expensive gift. It could be something very intimate. Or a homemade gift. Make something by hand. Now, listen, I get it. Not everybody's that creative. I understand. I really do understand. So I can't draw. I got a mean stick man for you. Head, nose, smile, put some curly hair all over the head, slender body, 2 hands, 2 feet, boom. Trust me, I got a mean stick figure for you. I'm not drawing nothing. That's not happening. But you never know what you can do homemade. I'm good with the woodshop stuff. I got tons of tools. I could make something. I can make a lot of things. So homemade gift. The one I'd add from my list, or what I would think of, is a helpful gift. Something to help them. Maybe it's a study book or guide, or maybe it's like a heating pad, or maybe it's, like sleep, like you can't sleep or they can't sleep. So you get them one of those, what are those called? Mask things that you can wear on your eyes, or shoot, get them some blackout curtains. If they don't, they might be claustrophobic if they get the eye thing. You never know. But simple gifts, thoughtful gifts are the best, I find, because it kind of means you've been paying attention. And the last, words of affirmation. So a couple from their list, a sticky note, random sticky note. Those are always great because they're intimate. You're thinking about that person in a way where you're actually taking time to write something. I think anything that can be written is great. Second one is a handmade card. It could be an encouraging thought. I'm just thinking of you thought. You're going to get through this thought. Here's some money. You never know. Whatever. Because I like music, a playlist with songs that remind you of them. Now, this is not like back in the day, because I used to make CDs. I used to do that. I used to make CDs, give them to a girl. Hey, girl, there's 112. Lean off 112, and going a little silk, Don't do that. Don't make that voice I just made. But, I used to make CDs back in the day. Like, hey, I was thinking about you, made this. This is what I think about you. See, I'm doing that voice again. Don't do that. But, we don't do CDs anymore. So maybe it might be a Spotify playlist you could send them or something like that. We're digital now. But a Spotify playlist or something like that with songs that remind you of them or them of you. Why not add, for myself, I'd say a random text of encouragement, a random text of thank you for being you, a random text of was just thinking about you. Hope your day is going well. Random text, have you eaten today? Listen, anybody who checks on me and asks me if I ate is huge because I can literally go all day without eating. I will forget about eating. I fast once a week, so it's not hard for me to go 24 hours or an entire waking period without eating. Sorry, that's what I do. Now, hopefully you know your Valentine well enough that either these ideas are really good, pop that light bulb on for you. You're like, oh, that's a great idea. Or no, they would never like that. Never like that at all. But it did spark something in me. So hopefully these ideas kind of either gave you a better idea or prompted a better idea for something your Valentine likes. Either way, here's hoping that you and your Valentine exchange some great gifts as it relates to the language of love or the love languages. I do want to thank Dr. Debi Silber for stepping into Dave's head and really hitting home about healing and trauma and betrayal. So many things that we experience, we go through, how to get through that. The 5 steps were amazing. I mean, they really related. I've talked a number of times about my divorce from a prior marriage and the process of that, and it's still ongoing currently. But to hear those stages verbalized and to flash back in my mind to where I was in each of those stages, what exactly triggered from stage to stage. I literally was doing that while I was listening, thinking of the moment that I went from stage 2 to 3, the moment I went from stage 3 to 4, and how I got to stage 5. And so it's amazing to hear, and you saw if you listen to the end of that interview, that I was amazed that she has a whole segment for the betrayee, the person, or is that betrayer? Sorry, betrayer, the person who's doing the betrayal, to make them a better person as well. Maybe I should recommend that to my ex. But it's something that I think is important. It's not just about the person who's hurt or in pain, but it's also about the person who caused the pain to also get help. Because if they both become better people and they both heal, even if they go their separate ways, never speak again, they'll be in better position to be good to someone else who hopefully deserves it. So check out our website, www.thepbtinstitute.com. Check it out. Check out our podcast. Check out her books, The Unshakable Woman, From Heart to Heal, From Betrayal to Breakthrough podcast. Check it all out. Great guest. We might have her back because I would love to dive into the betrayer side of things as well. Support our sponsors, Digga Movers, for all your moving needs, local and long distance. They're great at what they do. Check them out at www.diggamovers.com. And SRE Solutions for all your tech, PC support, antivirus, network cable runs, all types of stuff that SRE Solutions does. Check them out as well at www.sresolutions.org. And if you're interested in sponsoring on Dave's Head, reach out to me on any of my social media or email, and we can make it happen. And by the way, check out the new website, daveshead.car.co. Revamped for season 4, sleeker, fresher, better ways to reach us, and even have feedback from our website. We would love to have your opinion on the episode you're listening to right now. Check it out. Submit feedback. We'd love to hear from you. So Bird Gang, go Birds. Post Betrayal Transformation and Valentines. All great reasons to be in love with now. Let's go get that Super Bowl, Birds. That's all for this episode of Dave's Head. New episodes released on the second and fourth Friday of the month. For all things Dave's Head, check out our website at daveshead.card.co. Subscribe to watch new episodes on YouTube or Spotify video, or to listen via your preferred podcast player, go to anchor.fm/Dave's Head Pod. Thank you for watching or listening. As always, enjoy life, because life should be fun. Take care.